this year will be John Cena's final WrestleMania match. So before it happens, I thought there'd be no better time than to tier rank all of John Cena's WrestleMania matches so far. And to do it with me, I've got in one of the biggest John Cena fans. How are you, Jordy in the bank?
I'm great, mate. I'm great. And it's been an absolute pleasure to look back at John Cena's repertoire over WrestleMania and kind of put it into tiers. I've had to be realistic because, like, you know me, I'd kind of just want to throw them all in S tier and get them right up to the top, but that's not fair. Let's do it right for the video.
Absolutely. And let's kick things off with WrestleMania 20, his first WrestleMania match where he took on the Big Show in a United States Championship match, and he won the United States Championship. Now, this wasn't a match which was too long, but I just remember it was a match where the crowd was kind of on fire for it. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, Cena was very over, and it's hard to kind of put it that low with it being his first WrestleMania. It was a big moment, and of course that kind of huge moment where he picked up the Big Show and did what was an FU at the time. So I feel harsh to put it in I don't care. I'd probably throw it in decent, probably through nostalgia.
Yeah, I do completely agree with you there. It was a great way to kick off the show. So decent, I do think, is a very respectable rating for that one. Then next up, WrestleMania 21. He went from a mid-carder to a main eventer in only his second WrestleMania. Well, not main event, I should say, in the world title scene. Because, of course, he was facing JBL. Now, this match, I mean, I think a lot of people hate it a lot more than I do, to be honest with you. But it was just so generic, especially for a World Heavyweight Championship match. So I'm kind of tempted to put this around thumbs down. What are your thoughts?
See, I watched it back and I kind of enjoyed it more than I thought I would, which surprised me a little bit. This was the one that did surprise me. And the build for this with the US spinner belt and JBL destroying it in the trash can, all that. I'd kind of give it a thumbs up.
Really?
Yeah. Honestly, like I went back and I realized that JBL, although not to everyone's liking, he was a hell of a heel. And maybe it's looking through rose tinted glasses and thinking we don't see that much of that anymore. And I kind of miss it. The pace of the match was very different to what we get now. It's a lot slower. It builds up a lot slower. And maybe because I don't see a lot of that anymore, it was nice to watch it again.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say I don't care. I definitely wouldn't say that. I think I cared about it, especially at the time because I hated JBL. So I'd settle for another decent, but I can't go any lower than that for that one.
Wow. Okay, well, let's chuck that in the decent then and see what the Instagram comments think. But I do think it is true. The story was really, really good for it. And it was one where the crowd were loud. It was just, especially for a co-main event, I just didn't think it was WrestleMania level. Although, to be fair, at that time, a lot of matches weren't. But up next, we have WrestleMania 22 Big Time, as they called it then. It was when they started with the slogans. And then that went on for about a decade, and it was just, honestly, so many of them I was going to slap my face about. But World Heavyweight Championship, John Cena versus Triple H. Now, this match, I understand a lot of people said it was, very slow for a WrestleMania main event, but the crowd were on fire, and I did enjoy it for what it was. Did it maybe drag on a little bit? Sure. But it also felt like, it didn't feel out of place as a WrestleMania main event. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I liked it because this is Cena and Triple H. Do you know what I mean? And I think I completely agree with you. It dragged on maybe a little bit too long. Where would I put it on this list? I would probably give it a thumbs up. If not, they deserve my applause. Wow. Maybe that's too much of a stretch. I'll reel it back in. But I think it definitely gets a thumbs up, especially when you look at some of the other matches down the line, and if we come back to look at it and go, actually, we probably need to bump a few of these up. So yeah, I think it gets a thumbs up from me.
I will completely agree with you on that one. Then up next, we have what was in ring-wise my favorite John Cena WrestleMania match versus Shawn Michaels. Now, I don't like it as much as I like their Monday Night Raw match they had, but it was still, I really, really did enjoy it. I wouldn't quite say a banger of a bout, but I'd put it just beneath that. I'd say it could take my money, but what are your thoughts?
I'm with you, mate. I'm with you. I don't know that it was still a very solid build. It was good build, but there's certain ones down the line that felt like bigger moments for John Cena, I guess I'd say. And perhaps this flies under the radar a little bit in that sense, but I think Shawn Michaels certainly got the best out of him from an in-ring perspective as well. So I'd say take my money. If I got to see this again with these two at the level they were at the time, I would hand over my money, hand and fist. So
absolutely. Then, of course, up next we had WrestleMania 24, the World Heavyweight Triple Threat match between Randy Orton, John Cena, and Triple H, where Randy Orton retained. I mean, I don't know why, but I just always have felt that this match didn't quite live up to the expectations for me. I still did enjoy it, and I will say, I will give it a thumbs up, but it's just not as good as I think you'd expect from these three guys at WrestleMania, at least to me.
I'm with you. I completely agree. Thumbs up, I think, is fair. I think it's fair for us to expect more than a thumbs up when you see them three names. So, and now I'm just thinking to this upcoming WrestleMania, we've got another big triple threat with another big three names. Are we gonna be in this same position, being like, well, it was good, but I just wanted a bit more? It's hard when you've got three people that big because you expect more than a one-on-one. You expect something more because there's one extra name, so it's difficult. But yeah, I think thumbs up is probably a fair ranking.
There we are. Then let's chuck it in there. Then, of course, we had another triple threat match the next year. John Cena, Edge, and The Big Show. A lot of people are quite harsh on this match. And a lot of people... And I feel like the reason for that is very simply because it followed, of course, Undertaker Shawn, which is, you know, pretty much impossible to do, right? It came after that. But even still, I did enjoy it, and maybe it was because it was my first kind of WrestleMania as well, but I'd say it was decent.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of them. Maybe it could have delivered more, but it was just, how do you follow Taker versus Shawn? It was just possibly, and in many people's minds, the greatest match of all time, certainly one of the best WrestleMania matches. So it's hard to follow that. Cena and Edge's rivalry is fantastic. To kind of have Big Show, I think it goes under the radar as well that John Cena and Big Show, they had a good long feud of like they kept kind of running in the same paths for quite a while. So to kind of see them three all intertwined into one was cool. But yeah, it was probably no more than decent. Cena and Edge have definitely had better matches, just the two of them.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Then up next at WrestleMania 26, we had Batista and John Cena. Now, I loved this storyline. I loved it when John Cena and Batista were feuding as a kid. I was so into it. But I just didn't think this match delivered to the hype, to be honest. And again, it wasn't bad, but I just didn't think it delivered to what I expected, considering how great the two were when it came to actually building up the match, building up the feud, and also the matches they had, you know, before and after this too, I thought were a lot better than this one. So I'm tempted to say decent for this.
Yeah, I would maybe bump it up to thumbs up from me. This is the Rumble Tumble, right? That resulted in a WrestleMania match. Or have I got that wrong?
I can't even remember now.
I can't remember, but regardless, these two, it's one of them things when you think they should deliver something huge. You do kind of assume that, and you want that to be the case. But now I'm older, and I do look at it on paper, and I think, are these two the greatest dance partners in the world? When you look at them on paper, it does make sense that they didn't put on a 5-star match. I hate to use that term, but you know what I mean. A Wrestling Republic 5-star match, not any other 5-star. That's the only ranking system that I take into consideration. So yeah, it does make sense. I would maybe give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
But you met me halfway on JBL, so we can bump it down into decent. I'll meet you halfway on this one.
Fair enough then. Let's keep it at decent. Then up next we had, I mean, I like to forget this happened, to be honest with you. I think it's, without a shadow of a doubt, the worst WrestleMania main event of all time. And there was quite a few bad main events early on in WrestleManias. I tier ranked those a little while ago. But, I mean, a WrestleMania main event should not be a match to set up another WrestleMania main event. And that's what this was. It was essentially a match which should have been on Monday Night Raw in January the next year or something like that. It was just, it annoyed me as a kid. But growing up, it annoys me so much more. And I'm going to be honest, it's so diabolical, it makes me sick.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. I remember at the time, this was the moment for me where I was like, nah, I'm Team Cena. Throughout this whole thing, however long it lasts, I'm Team Cena, because it annoyed me that the WrestleMania main event ended like that. As excited as I was to see The Rock again and to see him actually kind of do a wrestling move, it was just a bit like, not now. And I feel bad for The Miz as well. I feel bad for The Miz in that respect, because he got the WrestleMania main event and it's kind of looked at in the light that you just said. It makes you sick. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd go that far. I'd say it belongs in the trash. But listen, if it makes you sick, who am I to disagree? Just chuck it down there.
I just...
You feel more strongly about it than me, so put it where you want it.
The biggest WrestleMania match, it should have been the biggest match of the year, right? And on a card, I mean, that's the thing. People talk about WrestleMania 27 being the worst of all time, which I don't agree with. But Undertaker and Triple H, No Holds Barred, it was that year, was on that card. And people are calling it potentially the worst WrestleMania of all time. And I think it's because, you remember how the event finishes. And that's just stayed in people's heads for so long. But up next, we have Once in a Lifetime, until it happened the next year, The Rock and John Cena, the first of the two. A lot of people said this went too long. I'm going to be honest, I still really enjoyed it. It didn't bother me. What about you? What were your thoughts?
This has to go for me in... It could even go in the top, but that's probably my preference, because this is like the two icons of my wrestling childhood. We're going head to head, so that's probably why I hold it in such a high regard. But I don't think I'd ever put it in anything but Take My Money, because that it was even for me now. I would still say Take My Money, even though they're all both getting on and it'd be a slow match, but. Definitely at that time, that was what you define as a money match. Like, it was a Take My Money match.
You know what? I was going to say a round of applause, but screw it. It can take my money too. There we are. But the next year, they followed it up again, and I didn't think it was as good, but I still enjoyed it, right? So I'd say maybe thumbs up.
Yeah, I would definitely give it a thumbs up, if not an applause. I would give it an applause because Cena came out this time on top, and the redemption arc was complete. So that's why personally I stood and applauded, and I was really happy. But I think thumbs up is probably fair. And a lot of it comes from, you say once in a lifetime and do it the following year after setting it up through a main event. It's gonna leave a sour taste. You're gonna find it hard for people to not only enjoy it as much as the first, but to not be a bit sick of it in a sense. So
yeah, I mean, right now I've just searched it up on Cage Match, right, and I've looked at the individual ratings, and it is hilarious because everybody's either rating it like between 2 and 4 or 9. And all the ones who just saying 9 is because they're saying, as a kid, it hooked me in. Cena finally did it. So I think it was a big moment for a lot of people. But I think from a purely in-ring standpoint, that's where, it kind of was the same, but not as good
I
as
was
the year
so
before.
happy. I was so happy when he did it, and then when when The Rock put him over by like shaking his hand on the stage, and this is what I mean by there's moments like this match was nowhere near as big as Shawn Michaels. As good as Shawn Michaels. It was nowhere near as good in the ring as Shawn Michaels, but I remember them two being stood on the stage and that handing of the baton moment, and I'm like, that's
You know what? You persuaded me. Take subtle round of applause. Why not? But
we applaud it.
Subtle round of applause for that one. But then we move on to WrestleMania 30. And of course, John Cena, Bray Wyatt. Now, this is one of those where, from a purely in ring standpoint, it was maybe mid. But from a storytelling standpoint, I just loved it. I really, really did. So I'm happy to give it a thumbs up. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it would. I agree. I think in ring it was fine. I thought it was a decent match, but the story led it. As often the case with Bray, not that he couldn't go in the ring, but his ability to tell a story, as well as John Cena's ability to tell a story, you've got magic there, and that's what we got. I think I would put it higher if we got the right outcome. I think we can all agree that Bray probably should have won that match, and it did affect his momentum. So if he had, it would probably genuinely be like, take my money up there, but it probably stays in thumbs up because, as a huge Cena guy, Cena shouldn't have won that match. There's been a couple of times over his career where he shouldn't have won. The Nexus was one at SummerSlam, and Bray Wyatt was certainly one.
Then up next, WrestleMania 31, John Cena, Rusev. And the most memorable thing about this for me was Rusev's entrance. The actual match, I'm going to be honest, I just didn't care for it.
No, I have to agree. The most memorable thing again for me was the entrance, and going from where we were from obviously John Cena, The Rock, John Cena, Bray Wyatt, John Cena, Rusev. I did find it hard to care as much, and just at this time in my life, I was falling out of love with wrestling a bit. I was at that age, and my guy John Cena had been reduced to Rusev after being a Bray Wyatt and The Rock guy, and I was just I didn't care for it. I really didn't. I wanted to care more than I did, and even going back and watching it, I just was like, I have to get through this one.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Up next, well, he took WrestleMania 32 off, a lot like the rest of the roster, to be honest. Pretty much just everybody was injured for WrestleMania 32. Wild time. But then he came back at 33 and he teamed with Nikki Bella to take on Miz and Maurice. Really fun rivalry. Absolutely nothing of a match. And I think the most memorable thing about it was, of course, the engagement after it, which, of course, hasn't ended well. So I'd say thumbs down.
Yeah, fun, like you say, a fun rivalry, but this was again for me. I don't care. Like, maybe even chuck it in the bin. It was like, what's happening to John? Like, what's happening? Like 3 years ago, we were world title fights, and now we're doing couples matches. That, like you say, it was a fun rivalry, but I remember at this point, I was like, I want more from John Cena right now. So, thumbs are down. I would definitely say.
Up next, we, of course, had that Mania where John Cena just sat in the crowd and he was like, I'm just here as a fan, because The Undertaker wouldn't answer him. Undertaker eventually did answer him. He came out. And all these years, we've all wanted Undertaker, John Cena, WrestleMania, dream match, undoubtedly. And it was a 2-minute squash with some really sloppy moments in only 2 minutes. I'd say trash.
Yeah, I feel bad. And the reason I feel bad is because in the Undertaker's documentary, he says that like that match was very important to him, as little and as nothing as it was, because he felt a spring in his step again, and he felt that he'd kind of buried some demons or what have you. So I feel bad saying it's in the trash, but like, it's not decent. I did care in a sense. I would probably say thumbs down. I think that's where I land on it, because thumbs down in the sense of disappointment, because like you said, it was a dream match that we all wanted more from.
Do you know what? How about we swap the mixed tag match and this, right? So we put this in the thumbs down and the mixed tag match in the trash.
Yeah, chuck that in the trash.
There we are. Then up next, we had, of course, we've spoken about this in a previous video we did together, but the Firefly Funhouse match, The Fiend and John Cena. And I've spoken about how, at the time, I didn't like it as much as the Boneyard match. And I, kind of thought, what is this? But as the years have gone by, it's become a classic. And it's actually become one of the matches I'll go back and rewatch the most. And I do love it. And in fact, I'd maybe go as far as say, in my opinion, it's a banger of a bout.
I completely agree. I think it's right up there. I think it stands on its own, and it should, because the innovation to go about to work around the boundaries that they were facing and to create a bit of content that stood the test of time, and I think will stand the test of time. When you look at Cena's heel turn and what he's doing now, it's almost grown a new lease of life. That Bray was right this whole time, that whole NWO sketch and all that kind of stuff about that demon living within inside John, it was all true. Bray was right all along, and now if you go back and watch that, it has a new meaning. And I'd love to see Howdy maybe tap into that somewhere down the line before Cena's heel run is over. But I love it, and yeah, I think it belongs at the top.
There we are, completely agree on that one. Now, his most recent WrestleMania match was WrestleMania 39. I was there for it, right? And this rivalry, John Cena just buried Austin Theory. He killed the man. No momentum left. And then they had this match, and I was like, it's going to need to be a banger for Austin Theory to get any momentum back. And yes, Theory won. But this was just one of the most boring John Cena matches I think I've ever seen. And I remember being there live, being so excited. And like I wasn't expecting a 5-star classic, don't get me wrong. But this massively under-delivered to the point where I would actually say, in my opinion, it is a steaming pile of dump. What are your thoughts?
Fair enough. It was a disappointment. There's a few on this list that have been disappointments, and I think this was certainly one of them, because maybe even from a selfish point of view. So I'd hugely started watching wrestling again by this point, like massively. And it was the first, I think, that I'd watched with my wife. And I was so excited, like, you're going to see John Cena wrestle. This is my guy. This is who I grew up loving. This is why I talk about him all the time. You're going to get to see him do his thing. And she didn't get to see him do his thing by any stretch. There was a few nice moments in this match where I thought, like, Theory had kind of really leaned into being a heel. Like, he bit him at one point. I was like, well, that's different. But because of the build-up, it made no sense that Theory won either. It was just like, okay, this hasn't gone the way you've planned it, because you've buried him into the ground and now you try to revive him with a win. And John had even said himself, even if you win, no one's going to care still. And it was just like, oh, God, you're so right.
Such a bad line. Such a bad line.
Shouldn't have said that. But yeah, where do I put it? Yeah, put it in a steaming pile of dump. I think that's fair enough. You were there live, mate. Who am I to disagree?
I was so disappointed, but there we have it, our tier list. Now, very quickly before we end, where do you predict that Cody Cena is going to end up on this list?
Take my money for certain right now, because because of the heel turn, and it's going to be a case of, like, if you look at it from a financial perspective, people are going to hand over fist, give money to see that fight. How it actually delivers, it could be anywhere, man. It definitely, I think it's decent and above. I really don't think it's going to fall into I don't care, thumbs are down, trash, anything like that because of Cody. It could be banger of a bout. If they have a medium to good match, Cena wins his 17. and because of the iconic heel turn, I think in sort of 3-4 years' time, we'll look back and be like, that's at the top as well, like with the Firefly Funhouse. But yeah, I definitely think it'll be decent or above.
Yeah, no, I do definitely agree with you. I mean, it is quite hard actually on this list where I put it. Like, I think on the Wrestling Republic star rating, I think it's going to be one of those matches which scores 4-2, 5-4, 5, and I think the comments are going to be saying we overscored it, when in reality the reason it gets that score is because of the story. I actually think as an in-ring match, it'll probably be about 3-7-5. So, good match, but maybe not as good as other WrestleMania main events in the last few years. But I do think it's going to deliver. I don't think we're going to look back on it and be like, it was bad. But I also think, obviously, John Cena's gotten old a bit now. I think they are going to, do all the hits a little bit. Few, what's it called? Crossroads. And I think that's how it's going to end up.
To not see him in a singles match, up until this point in the WrestleMania main event, since, when was his last singles match?
Last year.
Solo?
Yeah, Solo. Yeah.
Was it Solo, his last singles match? Right. So, yeah, because he came back at Mania, then he came back for R-Truth. So we've not seen him perform in a singles match since Solo Sikoa. And the next time is a WrestleMania main event, night 2. That's a little bit alarming even for me. But I trust him and his work ethic to think if they're going to give me this position, I'm going to make a good job of it, because I think in the Chamber and the Rumble, I don't think he's disappointed me at all.
Yeah, I that's a good point, actually. I wasn't thinking about that. In the Chamber, he did look really, really good. That completely skipped my mind, to be honest with you. But you are right. It just seems to be when Cena has a bit of time off, every time he comes back, he's very rusty.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my fear with this one. But to your point, in the Chamber, he looked fantastic. So let's hope he breaks the streak he's had and he really does deliver. I'm excited for it, that is for sure. But thank you, Jordy, for joining me for this video today. And thank you to everybody who's been watching it as well. Feel free to leave your choices in the comments down below. And of course, like and subscribe. It helps us out massively. We will see you guys in the next one. Peace.